think like the development wise, like over the last few years has been like why it's how unique has it been? Why these guys who maybe have transferred have been a little bit better than guys who've just been the traditional route?
Is there a stat that says that guys who are transferred?
That way, it seems like a lot of transfer guys have really done well, like development wise. I mean, how do you think that's affected things over the last few years?
I transferred. I've had quarterback rooms in the NFL where every quarterback in the room is transferred. I would just say in general, only one guy gets to play. And another guy doesn't get to go in there and play a 5-play, 10-play package typically, unlike running back or extra linemen you can use. So it's just a different position, and guys tend to transfer more. I don't know. I've been around some really good quarterbacks that have stayed put and got to see their time. Joe Gans would probably be the best example for me. Nebraska, great. Got to play half of his junior year and his senior year and is beloved by everybody there because he gutted it out and stayed there and led him some big wins. And other guys have transferred and gone and had success, and some of it's a maturity thing. For me personally, it was a physical maturity thing. I was 180 pounds when I got to Wake Forest as a freshman and a redshirt freshman. Wasn't very strong. I wasn't very fast. Transferred to junior college, gained 20 pounds. I can finally bench over 200 pounds for the first time in my life. I was very proud of that. And so then you physically mature and your confidence just goes through the roof because you got to change the scenery. You're physically mature, and so sometimes it's physical maturity, mental maturity, change of scenery. All those things can come into play, and I can give you 100 examples of each if you wanted them, of guys that stayed put and guys that moved on and had success. So
I don't think we have enough time for that today. So
that's a story. That's a story for you. Yeah.
You guys activated Trey Waynes and Deontay Smith to clear to practice. Do you expect them to? When would you like them to be back on the active roster? As soon as this week, perhaps?
Yeah, I think just because I'm expecting our 2 offensive linemen to come back and start to work this week. Riley will be a little more limited today than probably Trey. Trey Hopkins will go a little bit more, but I expect both those guys to get back this week and get going, so we're optimistic there. So with that being said, you get a chance to get Deontay back into the mix for this 21-day window, but not necessarily needing to get him going on the 53. Whereas Trey feels good. He's ready to practice. He's ready to go. But, again, being on the rehab field is one thing. Getting out there and actually taking some physical reps, we get a chance to look at him this week. And certainly if we feel confident enough about what we see and he feels confident enough, then there would be a great chance that he could be ready to go.
We didn't ask you about Joe Mixon's neck on Monday. How is his neck after that hit on Sunday? And
Good.
how do you expect him to react this week knowing he took full responsibility for the fumble after the game? Do you expect him to have kind of a big performance knowing he wants to make it up to his team?
Well, I think for Joe does an excellent job of ball security, and we all know we can't have that. He knows that, but he's one of the better backs I've ever been around in terms of ball security. So we expect that to be rectified and going forward. Joe is sick today, so he will not practice today. It's kind of that time of year where we have to be extra cautious with a lot of guys. If they show any symptoms of anything, and again, we don't think it's COVID related, but we're going to keep him. And there's a couple other guys that won't be there today, 2 D linemen, Tyler Shelvin and Rennell Wren. Also, same thing. Just if you're got a head cold at all, we're really limiting some guys. So Joe falls in that category today.
You had a couple of illness guys last week. Did that spread?
I don't know, because some guys feel differently than the other guys. Those 2 guys last week were confirmed flu. 2 of our D linemen are the same today. Joe Mixon's not in that category yet, but so you just got to see where it goes.
He's out with a cold, though, right?
What challenges does George Kittle pose in San Francisco's offense as a whole?
George Kittle is, I don't get into the arguments of who the top tight end is in the league, but I wouldn't argue against anybody who makes cases for that. He's been consistent for a really long time. He's not just a pass threat. He's very physical in the run game, can help him a lot of different ways, and it's amazing. For being one of the top tight ends, he's the 3rd best player to ever come out of his high school, which is rare that people from Norman High would be able to say that. But we got all the respect in the world for him. He's a guy they really count on. He makes a ton of plays whenever they need it. I remember seeing it firsthand at the Rams over and over and over. And you see it on the tape, especially against Seattle, the performance he just had where you catch it. Sometimes it feels like for a lot of guys it'd be a 5-yard gain, and for him it can be an 80-yard touchdown in a heartbeat. So, and part of what makes him so great is he's so physical in the run game and such a part of what they do in the run game. that you get used to him factoring into that, and then all of a sudden they use their play actions and their sneaks and their keepers and all that stuff to slip him out, and all of a sudden now you're a step late on him, and you can't afford to be because he's got such speed and power that he really hurts you that way.
You're basically playing a really good tight end every week between now and the end of the season. Now, I guess in each matchup, what's the most important thing when you're facing a really good tight end, and how does not having Logan kind of add to that?
Well, you want to limit all their pass threats in the pass game. So whether it's a tight end, the issue that you get with tight ends is oftentimes this is kind of what came up with Kyle Pitts in the draft, right? And why he's so unique is it's not always corners that cover those guys. Oftentimes they just get the matchup with linebackers or safeties, but they present like a receiver. They've got size like a big receiver, a 6'4", 6'5", 250 to 60-pound receiver that they move like that. So when you get tight ends that are like that, it presents a unique challenge for you. And, all hands are on deck on trying to limit that production.
What impact does Deebo Samuel have on all the things that they want to do in their offense?
Everything. He can do everything for them. That's just the simplest way to put it. But again, when the receivers are willing to block, and then you can use them in the run game and you can use them in the pass game, that's what makes the offense really lethal. And, Kyle's just got such a long history of this scheme and evolving it probably over 15 years, essentially, that he's found a really good way to employ all those guys and really keep you off balance on defense.
How far is your with their eye candy and a great fullback in George Kittle? Is this a particularly tough game for linebackers?
It's a particularly tough game for everybody involved on defense. Just again, how they tie everything together, and they'd probably tell you their marriage in the run in the pass, and it's true. It all ties into each other. It looks the same. When you can use a fullback in that regard or a tight end in that regard, that stresses you as well because you got to really come downhill and fit it, and they've got all the scheme. Yeah, they've got it all, and then they've got some really good linemen. The left tackle's as good as it gets, and they've got a lot of good plays around him. So, and a lot of these guys have been in the system for a long time. The first time we coached here, 2018, 2019, we played against almost all these guys, it feels like. So they've got consistency with the group that they've got, and the coaching staff has generally pretty good consistency. Some guys have taken, some upgraded jobs, but they've done a really good job there.
I think that was your home opener.
Oh, it sure was, yeah, 49-10.
How far has run defense come from that day?
Yeah, a long ways. Just familiarity with our scheme. I think our coaches have continued to get better in all phases of our team. I think our players have continued to grow their confidence in the scheme. We've added players, and night and day from 3 years ago.
Von Bell called Jimmy G a micromanager. Do you see, from a couple of years ago to now, the same types of characteristics, traits in his game?
I think he's a tremendous quarterback, and he understands what they want to get out of each play. Knows where to take his chances, can be accurate, played in a lot of big games, won him a lot of big games. And again, he's got some familiarity with several of these targets that they've got. So I've got a lot of respect for Jimmy.
What's the biggest lesson you learned out of that 2019 49ers game?
We had a setback, I think, on our opening kickoff return, and then we didn't send a motion on the second play of the game and took a loss. And punted. We went 3 and out, and it kind of they gained some momentum, I think, early on in that game. If I'm not mistaken, it was 17-10 or 14-10. We had the ball in a 2-minute drive going into halftime, and we threw a pick, and they scored, and then they scored to start the second half. And I think the next time we got the ball was 31-10. So it went from a one-score game, potentially 17-10 with us driving at midfield to score, and they ended up scoring twice before we touched the ball. It's 31-10, and against that team that year, that was a Super Bowl caliber team. You could feel that. It put us in a hole, and we couldn't crawl out of it. And next thing you know, it's 48-10 or 49-10, and it just shows you how critical those moments are in the middle of the game. I think if you want one lesson, how critical the moments are in the middle of the game. Whereas, maybe if it's just an incompletion or a completion and we go down to kick a field goal and it's 17-13 and you feel pretty good going into halftime that you've kind of weathered some storm. as opposed to getting the ball back with probably 10 minutes left in the third quarter. It's 31-10, and that's hard to get out of. So just how critical those into half, beginning of the second half moments can be.
Zach, at this point of the week, do you anticipate Bacci starting, or is Marcus still in the mix for that?
We'll have to see Marcus as the week goes, and see how he responds. But Bocce would be ready to play. We're going to get Bocce ready to play. He's done a really good job, stepping in there last week and getting himself ready for this game. So we'll plan on him playing, and if Marcus is able to get back, then that'll be a bonus.
What about Uzi?
We'll see how he goes as the week goes, and so, again, we want him to stay off his foot, particularly today and tomorrow, and see how he feels later in the week.
Yeah, Joe Burrow says that he hasn't thrown a football since the game on Sunday, and he said he might be limited. He also said that from a quarterback standpoint, how important is it to get days of practice with reps throwing the ball, or is it a position where he can take the mental reps and be fine on Sunday?
Yeah, he's certainly far enough along in the season with our scheme where we're not adding just entirely new concepts each week. So he's got the physical and mental reps of doing it. It's not unusual that he wouldn't have thrown until this moment. It's Wednesday afternoon. He normally wouldn't have thrown. We won't have him throw today, just to give it one more day to rest and see where we're at tomorrow and make a decision there. But again, I think it's a little bit of an unknown, until he gets out there and does it. But he's a tough guy. He played through it. And so we're optimistic that he'll get back to practice and get some good work in.
Will you have him try on gloves today, grip the ball?
He's in pretty good control of that. I'm not going to dictate what he wears or puts on it. He knows better than I do how it's going to feel and what he needs to do to get ready. And so I've got full faith in him to get himself ready for Sunday.
So he has the freedom to experiment.
Correct.
Nobody in the AFC has fewer than 4 losses. Does it feel different to you this year to be in early December with everybody bunched in so close?
Yeah, it's hard for me to remember, but it's so year to year, and it is difficult for me to remember a year that has been so bunched up like this. But probably like a lot of teams are saying, it doesn't really matter what anybody else is doing at this point. And that's the good thing about some of the positive things we've done this year is we put ourselves in a position to where we don't need to worry about everybody else at the moment, and just take care of what we can control and keep moving forward, and hopefully we don't have to rely on anybody else.
You're around the league, a lot of people saying that Shanahan schemes his receivers open as well as anybody does in the National Football League. Obviously you have to have smart players to do that. Does he change, a lot of things in terms of route trees, route combinations on a week-to-week basis?
That part's hard for me to answer. I think just having studied him for a long time and having a lot of respect for what he's done, he's pretty quick with the compliments to the things that he needs to be able to complement to get the guys open. So just understanding defensive structures and, okay, if they've taken this away, then this should be pretty good. And generally that's what provides the guys to get open. So again, I'm doubtful that it's just a whole restructuring of the scheme from week to week and more so just they've got enough core stuff to complement and be ready to react based on what they see from the defense, and that served them well for a long time. Him in Washington, Atlanta, San Francisco, Houston, Cleveland, everywhere he's been, they've done a good job of that.
You ever study his dad? Miles' dad?
No, not really. My father-in-law came from the Houston Texans when we started working together at Texas A&M. So that was my first opportunity to really study the Gary Kubiak, which in a lot of ways is Mike Shanahan. I'm sure I just never went back that far to Denver. But then I started working with Clint Kubiak. So we'd spend every Sunday watching the game, to see what the Texans were doing. Kyle was on that staff. He was the quarterback coach initially and then became the coordinator. So I fell in love with the Houston Texans offense, which is whoever you want to give the credit to. There's a lot of people involved that made that thing go, and it's still the principles carried to us, LA, San Francisco, New York Jets, Green Bay Packers. Everybody is influenced by Denver, Houston Texans, whoever you want to give that credit to. It's all in that same family.
With the injuries, do you expect to add a linebacker?
To add a linebacker, I think we're certainly looking to see what's out there. We've got a lot of guys that have been in here for months, weeks, that are ready to step up. But again, at this point in the year, when you have injuries, you're open to Always looking to see what's out there, but there's nothing specific that I have to comment on. But I've got full faith that our guys are ready to step up. Our coaches have Al's done a really good job with those guys, getting them ready. Darren always works those guys into special teams because he knows there's moments like this where guys are going to have to step up. So you don't want guys that are just alien to the scheme and haven't gotten any reps. So we feel fully confident our guys will be prepared and ready to step up.
What makes that run defense, what makes that run game so effective, and what elements of it do you have here?
I think they have really good coaches and they have really good players, and that experience intermixed with they've done it this way for a long time. They've got a lot of variation in the run game. It's not just wide zone. It's not just their perimeter stuff, their jet sweeps, their tosses, their gap scheme. They've got it all, and they've got, again, good coaches, good players, and experience in the system, and it makes it tough to defend. There's always principles that you see in their offense that have carried over to a lot of teams that I've been a part of and that we do here. And sometimes you can feel it coming, as you're watching them. I remember that 3 years ago, as soon as you see the action, you're like, oh boy, here it comes. And so they're just good at tying it all together.
Burrow said he was disappointed with his number of interceptions that he's thrown so far this year. What have the conversations been like with him? And kind of I know we've asked you about it at the time, but as he kind of acknowledges this as well, what are the conversations like between y'all as y'all try to get that curve?
Well, the turnovers in general, the two last losses we've had have really hurt us. I think 7 total. It all ties in together. And he's got an interception on a play that could have been a 71-yard touchdown. There's not much you can do there as a quarterback. But that's just part of playing the position. The responsibility falls on you ultimately, because a lot of people just look at the piece of paper. But there's all those things that he wants to continue to improve on as well. And so that's just part of playing the position, being aggressive, and balancing that with great decision making. And it's always, we're always looking to protect the football.
We've asked you so much about the 49ers offense, but defensively, what do you think that they do well in particular? And has it changed a little bit with Saleh not being there to coordinate at all?
That part's hard for me to say because I haven't seen them in a couple years, and they had really started to evolve a little bit. I feel like over the last couple years, but they do a really good job. Their guys play fast. Their D-line, usually when they got a good D-line, that stands out first and foremost, and they can wreck the game. They got a really good front, and they've always had a really good front. And even with some of the injuries that they have right now, they still have a really good front. The linebackers play fast and are instinctive, and that probably comes from they've had good linebacker coaches there over the years, and now their coordinator was a tremendous linebacker in his own right in his day, and so it's not surprising to see those guys play as well, even though they had to play a lot of different guys there over the last couple weeks. Those guys all are instinctive, and they know the scheme, and they play fast, and I think that the trio of safeties they play are really impressive, and they got the young kid that seems like he's playing a little bit more, the USC guy, and they've got number 3, number 1 that have been there since I was in LA, and so they know the system really well as well. I've always thought 24 was a really scrappy, instinctive nickel. Understands the scheme. He's physical. He can do a good job covering. He's a good blitzer. They do a good job disguising their pressures with the nickels and the safeties. I think the corners. I know that they lost one last week, but those other 2 guys have played intermittently over the course of the year, and they're playing on those guys stepping up. And Josh Norman's been doing this a long time. He gets the ball out. He knows how to create fumbles, and he's probably top 3 in the league since I've been in the league for the last 10, 11 years of creating fumbles at the corner position. And he's instinctive and savvy, and so just a really well-coached group, really, really solid group that we got to be ready for because they're physical. They've been in the scheme for a long time. And it's a really good team from top to bottom.
All right, Coach. Thank you.
Thank you.